Hey, book club. I am so excited to be talking with Kate Clayborn today, bestselling author, romance advocate, and lifelong reader, and the author of what comes out today when you're watching this, The Paris Match. So, Kate, thanks so much for joining me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to talk about the book.
I am so excited. Before we talk about the book, there was this thing that you posted on Threads, and it says, how's my prep for tour going? I just watched a series of videos about how to smile properly in photos.
Yeah.
I need some help.
Yeah.
What does it look like? Is it helping?
Okay, so one thing I have been historically self-conscious about is that like I feel that I don't know where to look when people are taking pictures with their phones. I am like completely overwhelmed by that. So that was my first thing. Like, what do I look at when people are holding up their phone for a selfie? I have to say that a lot of the things I found were pretty destructive to my psyche. They were things
Oh
like,
no.
here's how to stand if you want your arm to look smaller. And I was like, well, I wasn't thinking about my
Oh no.
arm.
Oh no. Okay.
A lot of the tips I read were about like things that you should say when you're smiling. So like one I saw was that instead of saying like cheese, you should say money, that like that positions
Oh,
your mouth better for
money.
for a photo.
Maybe.
Yeah, so listen, this is my first book tour. I'm trying to like not wreck anyone's experience by taking bad photos with them, so we'll see how I do.
No, those are some of those I totally understand are maybe not good tips, but I really like. Okay, so where did you find out you have to look? I really want your help on this.
The key is you cannot be like you have to look at the lens part, right? Not at like
Okay.
the image of you and the person you're taking the photograph with, which always really confuses me. So, anyway,
Yeah.
look at the lens, that's the key. But sometimes you don't know where it is. Like if the person doesn't have the same phone as you,
Yeah.
listen, I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna get
That's
out there and do my best.
I think your best is going to be great because
I think if I keep
I love that you're doing the research for it.
yeah, I think if I keep my eyes open, it's already progress.
No, same. I think my worst nightmare is when there's like three cameras or everyone's like, "Oh, I'll grab it too."
Yes.
And you're like,
Yes.
"I don't know which phone to look at
Yeah.
now." Like
Yeah.
you've ruined it. You've
Yep.
made me uncomfortable.
We're gonna see.
Um,
We're gonna see. So everybody come back to my Instagram after this week and see how I did in my tour photos.
I love it. I love it. Well, so I started by saying, I read you're a lifelong reader, but also that you came into romance specifically at a time in your life when you really needed to rediscover joy and comfort and community. And I don't want to pry into the details
Yeah.
of that time, of course, but I just was curious reading that how romance found you, if it was a recommendation or if it was just something that you stumbled on.
It was, like completely by chance. And I feel like it was a really lucky break of my life. I did not, it's not that I didn't know what romance was or that I didn't know anyone who read it. I just had never been drawn to it myself, but I had moved to a new place for a new job. And like anyone who's done that, it's like very disorienting to do. Like to start in a new place, you're trying to get to know your colleagues, but also like you're trying to make a whole new life, all new friends. It's just a really strange time. And I like what I have always done whenever I have lived somewhere is get a library card at the local library. Everybody watching, support your libraries.
Yeah.
And I went to the library there and I saw a book that had this like bright blue cover, very like cheerful, and then it had a shoe on the cover. I didn't know that it was a romance, but I picked it up and I read it, and the author was from my hometown. And so I got it because I was homesick and I just was like, this sounds fun. And just, I mean, it was an incredible book. And then like since then, I really was like, I think this is what I have been like, this is something I've been missing in my life. Like I've been drawn to romance, the romance in various types of fiction for my whole life, but to find that there's this whole genre that just really centralizes that, it felt like getting discovered in a way.
Yeah. What was the book? Blue
The,
with the shoe, but
the book was Jennifer Cruzy's Bet Me, which is like of all the first romances to pick up, that's a pretty good one to land on. It's very funny, very sharp. It was great, a great experience. And then I was like face first in it. I just picked up everything I could read.
That's so great. I totally understand that. And so then, how did you go from reading romance to writing romance? Because that's a not everybody does that,
Yeah,
obviously.
you know, like I said, I just read and read and read. I was like just totally in love with the genre, but I think there was a part of me that growing up, I always loved writing and wrote stories and um, thought writing was really wonderful. But I'm also like a pretty cautious and practical person, and so I think I, in my years of like getting education, I was just thinking about like, hey, let's make sure I have health insurance. Like I never really thought about doing writing as a career. But the same thing, like when I started reading romance and I felt like it was something I just like, it was a discovery. It also felt like, oh, if you ever write, like this is it. This is what you should be writing. And so it just kind of started as like something I sort of tinkered with. I wasn't sure what I would do with it, but I got very lucky there too in like finding eventually querying and finding an agent. So
No, that's amazing. So, do you still work in education?
I do, yes. So I work
Oh,
I work during the day, and my job is really important to me, and so I've maintained both, sometimes to my sleeplessness.
my mom is a teacher, so I always love finding that out about people. So, what does like a typical writing day for you look like then? How do you protect that creative time, having another career you're so passionate about as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had to, when I first started, I think I was able to be a lot more like regimented about it. I used to get up at like 4 in the morning and I would write before like, I would write for an hour and then I would start getting ready for work. Um, but I think that I haven't been able to kind of maintain that. In the day to day, I'm like, getting through whatever task is right in front of me at work. And then I try to like find, time on the weekends, time when I have breaks, um, to write sort of in bulk a little bit more. I really wish I was the kind of writer who wrote every day, but I am not. I am not. So if there are any writers watching this, what I would tell you is like, don't feel bad if you don't write every day. You're still a writer. You can still get books written.
Yeah, no, and I feel like that's so realistic too, to
Yeah.
not be able to sit down and write for hours every single day. That was another thing that I read on your Threads account. I did a deep dive, if I'm being honest. I scrolled, you're so funny. Um,
Thank you.
and make really great points as well. But you were talking about in another post how like not enjoying the process doesn't make you a bad writer or it doesn't mean what you're writing is bad if you're not actively enjoying it. And I really don't feel like I hear people talk about that very often. Did that take a while for you to realize, or did you always go into it kind of knowing that it was okay if you weren't actively enjoying it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, in the romance genre specifically, because the genre is so focused on and invested in the idea of love, I think sometimes we end up talking about the work in those terms as well. Like we love the books we read so much. And so it's almost like you want to default to this posture of like, and I love writing too, or um, but for me, that was a real source of pressure for me. I have always loved being done with writing, but the process of it is pretty challenging for me. Like I second guess myself a lot. I'm not I'm not like a fast drafter. I really write like one sentence at a time, revise as I go. And um, I think I had to sort of teach myself that like that is part of the way I get books written is through that process. And I think what's important is that like when it's done, I love the thing, but I have to know that like the path there might be really challenging. Um, and I think it's good for creatives to hear that too, especially because people who are creative, I think we are encouraged to think that like whatever we're doing it for the love of the craft. So we have to be like happy and excited about whatever part of it. But I think that creatives have complicated relationships with their work, just like anybody else who works. And I think it's important to talk about that.
For sure. I totally agree. Yeah, no, I'm so happy we talked about that because I do feel like there's that posture, like you said, and that almost expectation that's put on creatives, and it's just so interesting to me. But so you went from finding romance and then writing romance, and now you have a couple other books before, but the Paris Match, that I want to talk about. And so how did the Paris Match come about? Can you tell me a little bit about the book for people who will just be picking it up also, not next week,
Yes.
but the week after?
Yeah, so the book is about this woman, Layla Bailey, and she is a physician who, like, within the last couple of years, she has gone through a divorce. But the divorce was, as she says many times, it was an amicable divorce, and she was very close with her ex's entire family. Like, they were kind of her family too. And so when her former sister-in-law gets married, Layla is invited to the wedding, and the wedding happens to be a destination wedding in Paris. And so to go to your like ex-husband's sister's wedding in the most romantic city in the world is a pretty big lift. But Layla is like the kind of person who wants to do the nice thing, right? Who wants to be kind and wants to be supportive. And so she goes to this wedding, but kind of like shortly after she arrives, like all hell breaks loose, and she has to team up with the best man, who is very different from her. He mostly does not want to do the nice thing. So there's a lot of difference in their personalities that makes for, I think a good romance to watch unfold.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. It was great. So where did that start for you? Where did this book start for you? Was it a character or some element of the plot or just a
Yeah.
feeling that you had?
I mean, there's a couple things. Like, one thing is that I really love Paris, and I guess, what I've said before is like, I love kind of our psychic relationship to Paris, like the way we think about it as this, sort of like really romantic city. It's a place that you go to kind of find things about yourself. And I'm always interested, in places like that, kind of the fiction of them in our heads and then the reality of them when we get there. So, I knew I would like someday to write something about Paris, but I never knew what exactly. But then I guess I got really interested in this phrase, amicable divorce, which I feel like we've been hearing so much more in our culture in like the last 10 years or so. And, I almost feel that what's happened to the phrase is it's become like a new standard for how to get divorced. So, of course, the idea of like getting a divorce and staying friendly with your ex and like everybody's okay about it and it was mutual, of course, that's like, if you have to get divorced, that would be like the ideal situation. But I really started to wonder about like the pressure, the sort of cultural pressure it was putting on people to like, there's only one right way to get divorced, and this is the right way. Um, and I guess I was thinking a lot about like who in our society is socialized to be amicable. Um, and I think women are more socialized to be amicable. To be polite, to maintain relationships, to like lubricate awkward situations. And so that's kind of where I got the idea of Layla as a character, right? Like somebody who would feel that pressure to keep everything smooth and keep everything nice. And maybe what that's done to her over time, right? Like the consequences that it's had on her over time. And I think those show up when she gets to Paris.
Yeah, I found it really interesting the way she kind of wielded the word amicable as this shield at all times,
Yeah.
and this form of self-deception that she was going through. And I thought it was really interesting to write somebody as both the deceptor and the decepted.
Yeah.
I always think that that's just a really cool
Yeah.
dynamic. And as she kind of goes along this journey to find out, how she really feels about something and giving herself the permission to actually
Yeah.
feel the grief and all the other things and the anger and whatever else she might feel about
Yeah.
it. I thought her journey was really, really interesting.
That's
And
so.
and Griffin, did you know, I don't want to spoil too much of his past and the tragedy that he experienced, but did you always know that about his past going into it? Or I guess, are you a plotter or a pantser? Like, how in depth do you form your characters before you go into a story?
I would say like I'm really a mixture of both. The thing I know most about before I start writing a book is the characters, to the point where like I feel I know things about them that probably won't make it into the book. I just try to like make them as real as possible in my mind. And for me, like doing that, that gives me access to the plot, I guess. I can figure out, when I know them so well, I know what they'll do in whatever scenario I put them in. So I do a lot of character work first. And I did always know that Griffin would be a character who is suffering. Um, I thought when I was writing the Paris Match, I had in my mind like a lot of French fairy tales and French literature. I was thinking a lot about Beauty and the Beast and Hunchback of Notre Dame and things like that. I knew that Griffin kind of retreating from the world and being um, sort of like hostile to the outside world, that is who Layla needed to meet. Um, and he also needed to meet her to sort of make his way back into the world.
Yeah. I felt like Paris was also a character. You talk about this idea we have of Paris, but it didn't feel to me like a postcard of it. I was curious what your relationship to Paris is and if you speak French and what
Yeah,
research maybe you had to do to fill in the gaps if you don't.
I speak French very poorly, and I speak it even more poorly when I am in Paris. It's like every time I've gone, I will like practice my French so that I can not embarrass myself when I get there. And then I may say like I'll go into a store and I'll say one thing in French and it's like I nail it because the person will speak back to me in French, but then everything's gone. I don't remember. Um, but my relationship to Paris, I think it is for so many years of my childhood and even my early adulthood. I was not a person who had the opportunity to travel when I was young, and I really romanticized that city. It was like a place I dreamed of going, and it was everything from like the food to the Eiffel Tower, like all the um I don't know, all the biggest sort of like media representations of Paris really like lived in me, and I was really desperate to see it there. And the first time I went, I think I just experienced the city in a very different, I mean, I felt like I was meeting the reality of the city. It was like colliding with all those perfect pictures, and I loved it even more, right? I loved the reality of the city even more. And every time I've gone, I think I have like seen the city with my feet. I have just tried to walk as many streets as I can, and experience it as like a living place and not as like a postcard or like a 12-month calendar that you put on your wall.
Yeah, no, and that was so evident in the story. I knew that there was this deep love of Paris and the city and the way you described the shops and the streets and the
Yeah.
restaurants. Like I knew that that was evident, and I just thought that that was really nice to read
Yeah.
because I just think that that's so important, and it impacted both Griffin and Layla so much throughout the story, especially it being the place that she honeymooned, and there was so much history there. And speaking of the shared history, I thought you so masterfully just with a wedding, there's a lot of people naturally, and I feel like every single character that was in this story really added, and at exactly the right time they were pushing or pulling Layla and Griffin in the emotional direction that they needed to go. And I just thought that was so beautifully done.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
yeah, of course. Can you talk about maybe writing the wedding party and the relationships between, because there's Emily and Michael, but then there's also Layla and Griffin and how they might mirror each other or
Yeah.
anything about it all.
I mean, I think for me, the best and like most moving romances for me are always about love kind of writ large. So like, yeah, about the couple, right? Like the couple is always the sort of center and you're writing for their happily ever after. But to me, like a happily ever after always feels more stable or more secure when I have had the opportunity to see those characters love and be loved by others and how they respond to it. So I do think every character I wrote in the Paris match was designed to illuminate something about the way my main characters love others. Layla with her former in-laws, like I think the love that she had for them was and is very genuine, right? But it was also a love where she felt really obligated to please them, right? I think Griffin with Michael, his best friend, the love between them is so deep. But it was also kind of the love between them was sort of solidified through something very tragic, and that has shaped the way they interact with each other and all the lessons the characters have to learn about love, in order to be happy together, they need those other people to inform them. That has always been the best kind of romance to me. And also, I will just say, I love like in a romance or any kind of book. I love like a set piece scene. I love when there's a scene where a lot of characters are together and there's like different voices and there's a lot happening. I love that sort of scene. So I was glad to get to do it here.
Yeah, yeah, those were some of my favorites. Gosh, I feel like I could dive into this forever with you because there's so many like little things I'm like, oh my gosh, but I guess so early readers, they've described this book as your most tender and deliberate yet. So I guess did it feel different writing this book compared to your other books? Was it slower, more careful, or it just kind of landed this way? Because I agree as an early reader.
Um, it did feel Yes, it did feel different to write it. I think how to put this. I think with every book I write, I'm going to try to talk about this without being like boring.
No, you're not boring at all. This is amazing.
With every book I write, I do try to think about how to make sort of the sound of the book consistent with like the theme of the book or the feeling I'm trying to evoke in the book. So that that usually means for me like I am trying to make very deliberate choices about how the characters like think internally, how they speak to each other, how their voices change over the course of the narrative. So I can remember the first time that I wrote Griffin's point of view, which I think maybe the third or fourth chapter of the book is his first point of view. And I remember writing that chapter and knowing that like his voice had to be like very staccato and like quick and chaotic, right? Because that's where he is like mentally and physically, right? He's like feeling a certain way that I wanted to convey through the language. And then each chapter I wrote in his point of view, I had to kind of change that language a little bit to adjust for how Griffin is changing. Um, so I think I had to be really thoughtful about that. And this book did feel different in that way. But then again, I think anytime I'm writing a book, every time I'm trying to do something somewhat new, I guess.
No, that totally makes sense to me. The way that you describe your process, it's so interesting to me because it feels so reminiscent of what I do. Like, I start with the character too, and going into those pieces. And so I totally understand what you're saying. I feel like on just such a different level. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I get that, and the sound and the things you're saying, and I just think
Yeah.
that's so interesting. I
And
mean,
just
in all your
for
books.
you, like with acting, like every choice that you make as an actor, it is going to do something to like the emotional impact of that performance, right? And I do try to think about that when I'm writing. Like small choices can add up to something big in terms of emotional impact.
Yeah, no, and I love that so much because that's true. I mean, our lived experiences and who we are as people really
Yeah.
does it carries us through life in a certain
Yeah.
way, and
Yeah.
it totally impacts what we're doing all the time and the relationships we have. And
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much. And all of your books, I mean, you write so beautifully, and
Oh,
I
thank
I love that. I feel like there's a different sound to each one, like you were saying. You try something new, but it's all just so wonderful. So this is so great. And I guess to kind of close us out, if there's anything specific that you were hoping readers would take away from this book, or anything that we didn't talk about that you're like, I'm excited for people to read this piece of it.
Yeah, I think something I'm really excited about for people to encounter in the book is the way that seeing places or like seeing art or seeing famous landmarks or whatever in a city, that those moments can transform you and help you understand other human beings better. Um, and I think in the time that we're living in, um, I would love it if a takeaway people had is that like um, art is a meaningful way to see the humanity in other people, and you can find it in places other than just Paris. I hope that's something people take away from the book.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love that so much. Oh
yeah.
my gosh. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for sharing all of this with
this
me.
was
This is just so
amazing.
special. I know it means so much to me, and this is so special to be able to hear more about just the inner world of your stories. I mean, that's so great. I just really appreciate it.
Well, I'm so glad you love the book, and I hope your readers will too.
Oh, I know it. I know they will.